Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries Live with Tanya E. Hood. I'm glad I get the chance to see you again and hoping that your day has been amazing. And if you listen to this morning's episode and you are an individual that have gone through the moments of loneliness, this morning you got a few insights about how to make that a little bit better. I remember my moments, and it was going through what I shared in this morning's episode, the caterpillar zone. I had my caterpillar moment where I felt all alone. But I want you to understand, feeling alone and being lonely, two totally different things. I share that in this morning's episode because there are times we forget how that element has a unique, distinguished difference. Because if we choose to let those two words continue to stay synonymous, we can find ourselves in a position where the loneliness turns to grief. That is not something that you want, and that's not something that I want to experience ever again either, which is why I want to be clear to distinguish those two thoughts. You can be alone and not be lonely. When I was walking through the conversation this morning in this episode, I was sharing one of the things that you can do is change your perspective. I used the caterpillar as an example to change your perspective. It's in our caterpillar moments that we get the opportunity to recognize that where we are, we get to grow from. Because a caterpillar spends all of its time growing and developing, taking in what it needs so that it can be better. Because the caterpillar knows that stage, that's a temporary moment in its existence. It will one day go through a transformation. And in your lonely moments, you'll have to recognize that you too, one day, will go through a moment of transformation. So let me give you a few ideas and some tips that you can use to help you transform. Because when I finished going through my personal chaotic moment, and if you listen to this morning's episode, then you already know what I'm about to say. Yes. My breakdown in the middle of Safeway. It was not pretty. It was very embarrassing. And for those of you that have been wondering, yeah, I left those groceries right there. People tried to help me. They tried to give me some insight and some support while I was having an emotional breakdown in the middle of Safeway. And I felt embarrassed and left all those groceries there. Once I got my composure, drove to a new Safeway, finally got my groceries and then moved on. But it was there, sitting in the car, where I really got the revelation, Tanya. This does not have to be what you previously thought. Because I was raised in a time period where single mothers, it was a stigma on society. There weren't any thoughts about being a single mother that felt like it was any encouraging elements to it. I had a small village of people to help me. But in those moments, when it's evening time and darkness arrives and you're by yourself, that help that you thought you had and you kind of want, yeah, that still sits in your soul. And it was there that I was struggling. But it dawned on me after that I will not discard my emotions again. That's the second thing I want you to do. Pay attention to your emotional warfare. You got to know what you're dealing with. And you have to recognize that being alone and being lonely, first thing, are not the same. But the second thing, deal with the emotions. I had to really unpack what it meant in my mind's eye to be single with children. I had to unpack what it meant in my mind's eye to function in that element alone. And I started putting some measures in place. So, having dealt with how I felt about being a divorced single mother, my next thing, my caterpillar moment of growth, start getting some insight about what I needed to do to get better because I knew I needed some resources. I needed to think different about how I was functioning. I need to look at what resources I could have to support me and my babies. So the ever eternal student in my soul, she started reading. Y'all, I have a whole bunch of books. It's just books upon books upon books. And it was there that I began my journey because you do not have to walk all the elements of the path that you are on by yourself. Somebody else somewhere has already walked it. And I'm sharing elements of my life so that you do not have to continue to step on the landmines I have already crossed. So recognize these things as your support guide, because as a caterpillar in that moment in time of my existence, I fed myself a hearty helping of all kinds of encouragement books, mental development, personal development, growth development, development. What do you need to develop in? My first few thoughts was just getting reconnected to Tanya, because my disconnect and how I felt about being divorced and what my reality was, it was not the same. The way I envisioned being single was just totally by myself with my kids, but that wasn't my reality. And see, my children's godmother, she stood in the gap. There are some individuals that are in your world that will stand in the gap to support you. There were a few days that she would come by and get the boys so I didn't have to carry that burden by myself. And when I thought back, maybe you had a marriage like I did, where you were already a married single mother. Mhm. It is a real thing. I was already in the evening taking care of the boys by myself. When the afternoon came and I got them settled from school, got prepared for the next day, that whole evening time that I was still sitting in, it was a time period that I was already sitting in by myself because my ex-husband worked the night shift. We did not put the kids to bed together. We did not do any of those things together. I always did it by myself. So my thoughts about being alone, something that I made up in my mind, something that I envisioned from somewhere in my past about what that looked like. If your current situation and the images that you're creating in your mind do not match, sit with yourself, figure it out, and get it together. It leads me to the third thing I want to say. There may come a time when you will need to have your Lazarus moment. I shared a story from my favorite book about these two sisters whose brother passed away. But the passing of him was not the end. His name means God has helped. And it was Jesus that joined them on the journey that brought Lazarus back to life. And so now, in this day and age, his name is synonymous with with a resurrection. There are moments in your life that you would like to have a resurrection. What is that? What does that look like? I had to resurrect an element in my being of being confident and clear about Tanya, standing on what I knew to be true about me, because I allowed elements of my being to be whittled away in a marriage that was not initially supporting me. And I had to grow into a different version of myself, just like the caterpillar has to grow into being the butterfly. I shared in this morning episode that the butterfly exists because the caterpillar was brave. It took me finding my confidence to be brave. It took me finding my resurrection moment to be brave. It took me discovering the Lazarus moment in my being to be brave enough to step into the unknown. Because most of the time, we do not face our future because of the fear of the unknown. I want you to know that everything that you have encountered once upon a time in your world was unknown. And now you're on a new path. Face this new path with assurance that you've already overcome the unknown. And when new moments arise, that is simply a new chapter in your book. There are volumes that some of us are creating with our lives. And if that is your story, close the book, because my past marriage was a book in my life that I needed to close, because there are pieces in that part I will never return to, just like there are pieces of a caterpillar that the butterfly never returns to. You know it was your past existence, but you don't have to live that. I started rewriting new elements of my being a Tanya that was more sure of herself, a Tanya that had more confidence in how to walk some elements. And I also used my favorite book as a support system to get me through my journey. Some of you are fully aware that the only reason I was able to get off the edge of that bed in the aftermath of my divorce was because I cried out, God, help me. And to read and understand and learn that Lazarus's name simply means God has help. So when I let my caterpillar moment sit in the midst of my past, I let the God has helped be my true resurrection. And if you need someone to join you on the journey, if you choose to let Jesus join you on the journey, you get strength you never knew you had, a confidence that will give you assurance about your future, even though you don't know what it is, even though you're not clear about what's coming, you will be able to stand in it. You will be able to move through all of the obstacles that are facing you. And for some of us, we may need to do the small step-ins because when a butterfly first comes out of its cocoon, it's got to let its wings dry off. And then it's got to spread it for a little bit. There are stages to your new growth. The butterfly does not immediately fly away once it comes out. It goes through a process of checking some things out. If you got to do small parts of your existence just to check things out, to see how your wings will truly work for you, do it. So that when you come out on the other end, a brand new being in your butterfly moments, you're strengthened, you're sure, you're confident, you'll stand, and it is there that you will continue to get your breakthroughs. If anything that I have shared today has resonated with you, like, comment, let's extend the conversation. This is only small touch points that I can make with you today, but we can continue the conversation as we move through the journey. And if you have not listened to this morning's episode, go back, like, comment, and share there, because it is there that someone may need some element of it just to get assurance that this chapter of their lives is temporary, or they move through their caterpillar moment on their way to becoming a butterfly. And if you want someone to join you on the journey, feel free to go to my website, tanyaehood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. But if you need someone to have a conversation with you, go over to the Contact Me tab. There you can schedule a quick 30 minutes with me, and then we can see where you are. If you are a caterpillar still trying to figure out what to eat, if you're a butterfly, you know you've emerged, but you're not quite sure what to do with your wings. Let's have a conversation together. Explore where you are and give you some insight to move into a better direction. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.